Okay, hi everybody. Hello. I hope you're all well. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy this broadcast. We try to make them as lively as possible. They're all ad hoc. We don't have a script to read off. We just speak from the heart, and we hope that you guys and girls enjoy it and take something from it. So, right, let's crack on. Today we're talking about a pro boxer's training schedule, question mark. Well, things change, training routines change, attitudes change. A lot of it can be down to climate, etc. But my boxing trainer was an ex-pro, and we did have professional fighters that would quite often on a Sunday make an appearance and train. I'm not saying that this is going, but we, where we trained, it was a stables. It was a converted stables, converted barn, and attached to it was, guess what? A pub. So, we would get all sorts of people turning up on a Sunday, especially in the summertime, to watch their boys box, and elder brothers or friends that I knew, pro boxers, won't mention any names, would turn up. All the old pro boxers there that were all old pensioners would turn up on a Sunday to see the boys sparring, etc. So, I can tell you what I was taught, what I was learnt, as it were. Now, I've never been a pro boxer, but I had a lot of amateur fights. So, dependent really on where the pro boxer, we're talking about pro boxers now, were within their training schedule. If we take a world-class professional boxer, they would normally go away to a training camp, which could last anything from 12, perhaps even up to 16 weeks, but probably 12 weeks. They'd do a lot of their maintenance training in the gym, honing their skills and keeping their fitness levels up to a certain maintenance level. But to peak, they'd go away to a training camp. Lots of reasons why, because they would not want to have the confusions and distractions of basically friends and family around them. They need to go away to become a recluse with the training coaches and training team and sparring partners, normally away from their regular base. You'll notice that a lot of pro boxers from the UK will go across to places like Tenerife or Spain, where the weather is a little bit more guaranteed. So, dependent on where they were in their training schedule is kind of really the emphasis kind of shifts a lot of the time. But we're taking this as like a beginning stages of a 12-week cycle. So, We say that they would get up around and about 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. Between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. it would be a process of getting up and getting out and doing your road work. Now they'd probably have some form of protein drink, something like that, prior to their run, something light, but just something inside them, as it were. There's a lot of good pre-training drinks out there on the market, but they would probably take that. I don't know if you've seen the Rocky movies, where you see Rocky gulping down 3 or 4 eggs, isn't it? Something like that, raw eggs. Well, we're not saying that you should do that, but we were saying that they would have something of a high protein content before their run. Between 5 and 6 a.m. they would try and get in between anything from 4 to 5 miles road work. And it would be at a brisk pace. We're not talking about jogging like you see your Sunday morning joggers sometimes. You know, they're all almost just like a walking pace. It would be a brisk pace, and they would get in under their belt at least 5 miles. And that would be over all different terrains, uphill, etc., etc. One of the reasons why they would run at such an early time in the morning is there'd be less traffic on the roads. You wouldn't have to worry about cars spinning around a corner as you're running around your circuit. The air would be fresher, so it'd be better air quality. But most importantly, they'd get that run in. They'd come back, as I say, between the hours of 5 and 6, and they'd have some form of post-training meal, like an electrolyte drink or something like that. Okay? Obviously shower and then get back to bed. They'd be back in bed. If they get up at 5 a.m, make sure they'd be back in their bed by 6 a.m. Okay, so that would give them at least, they'd need to be doing, if they're doing 12 rounds, 3 minutes 36, between the hours of 5 and 6, they could get in 40 to 45 minutes of quality running. That's it. They then just go back to bed and sleep or rest, and just get their heads down and get some good quality rest. Now, what my trainer advocated is that they would really have a solid rest, even if they're just lying in bed and not necessarily asleep, resting up. That's the important thing. And they would normally get up around and about between 12 and 1 a.m, about 12 o'clock. So that would have given them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that they would have had a good 6 hours of rest before they eat next. I'm not going to training yet. And they would eat between 12 and 1. So they get to bed, back in bed, rest for about 6 o'clock, and they would just rest up right the way through to about 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, they'd get up and they would start gearing up for their boxing training. which would commence at 2 o'clock. Okay, 2 o'clock. So between the hours of 12 and 2 o'clock, they would eat, and they would eat highly nutritious. Mike Tyson, his favourite meal was steak and pasta. So they'd eat a nutritious meal, a meal fit for a king. They'd have probably something like some steamed broccoli, some rice, some chicken, or some liver, or some steak, or something like that, but nutritious. And they'd carb up. You might have some baked potatoes and chili con carne, but they'd eat something which was nutritious. Okay? This is why I say a lot of them, when they go away to training camps, they would be right literally on the doorstep of the training camp. Why? Because they don't want to waste unnecessary energy or time trying to get to the training facility through traffic, getting tensed up, your back muscles tensing up. They would be very close locations. So 2 o'clock would be the scheduled start of their boxing training. And this would be intensive. They would train for at least 2 hours until 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. They would do, as I say, was saying to you, dependent on where they are at with their training, they would do calisthenics, that's things like press-ups and plyometrics and sprints and bag work and pad work and skipping and all medicine ball techniques, and most importantly, sparring. Now there's a difference of opinion here, and it kind of like depends really, but you can actually do your sparring at the beginning of your boxing workout, so you're fresh. Okay, so you're not making silly mistakes, like if you're putting out a left jab or a jab or something, and you're making mistakes with it, dropping it, and the argument is that you could do the sparring at the end of the session, where you want to bring out the fighter's spirit. So the fighter has to deal with fatigue, because they've done all the bag work and all that prior, right? They got to then dig down deep into the trenches. But we always did our sparring first, after warm up, some bit of skipping and stuff like that, activation drills. We'd do our sparring first whilst we were fresh and our minds were alert. So as I say, that would finish at 4 o'clock. Then you would rest up. Between 4 and 6 o'clock, you would rest up and also eat. Again, you would eat a highly nutritious meal, which might consist of some fresh vegetables and fish, or some fresh vegetables and chicken. But you'd eat and rest. I'm not saying that they'd go back to sleep, but they'd just probably put their feet up on a sofa and just relax and rest. Read a book or anything, but that would be chill out time. And then what we're saying is that at 7 o'clock, between the hours of 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock, they would do their weights. But they would split the routine. All the main hard work has been done during the hours of 2 and 4 o'clock. The most important thing for the boxer has been done during those times. Everything else is Supplementary, the running, you've got to run, because if you're training for 12 rounds and you've got a man that's getting up off his stool for the 12th round to say, come on and bring it on, you will have definitely wanted to have done your road work. Okay. The same goes with the weights. The weights just gives you that little bit of impetus when you're in the trenches, and you know you're inside close and you're grappling, and you want to just have that little bit more, impetus, right? That's why we say do it in a split routine, and we've found what works best is 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on. And so, you know, you can pair up your muscle weight training programs to how you want, but you split the routine, okay? You split the routine and you hit it hard. You will have had prior weights training, you've had all your, you've eaten your meal and your meal's digested, your evening meal. You would have some electrolyte drink alongside you whilst you're training with the weights, but you would train hard. And you want to be out of the weights gym within maximum 35 minutes, right? And then your training is over, okay? So you'd be finished at, say, between 7 and 8, with the warm up and cool down and everything else. Designate that to your weights. As I say, you're doing the actual resistance training only for about, say, half an hour. And then from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you know, you'd sleep, you'd rest, dependent on what you think that you needed. You'd rest, you'd sleep. And I would say for a fighter, you're going to need 8 hours, so you need to be in bed by 9 p.m. Sounds simple in principle, doesn't it? But can you imagine what these guys go through, and girls, now? They're away from their families, sometimes thousands of miles away from their family. This is ritualistic. It's something that they will be doing, as I say, dependent on where they are in their training cycle, as much as 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Same thing, banging it in, banging it out. Their supplements will be scheduled in, phased in, what they're eating, when they're supposed to be eating, etc., etc., etc. But this is the way that professional fighter, generically, that's the way that they train. So I hope you've enjoyed it. For those of you that are interested in this sort of thing, okay, this is Cliff from II Crew England Speaks Out. See you. Take care.